Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have another session of growing your leadership. We're talking about a variety of E's in this leadership discussion. We kicked off talking about leaders envision. We've talked about leaders engage and enlist. And today we have someone in the house who's going to be sharing with us today about empower. And for many of you who know a little about me, you know how much I love that word empower. So we have somebody who's going to do justice to talking about it today. I'd like to introduce him very quickly. He's an old-time friend. We knew when we were children. And I'm excited to have him here today. Don't mind that he looks younger than me. We're actually age mates. So today we have on the podium Demola Omitayo. Demola is a marketing director. So let me just read his profile. He's the area marketing and sales director for West and Central Africa of British American Tobacco. He has over 20 years experience, sales and marketing experiences across multiple markets. Before his appointment, he was an associate global brand director responsible for Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa, and was based out of London. Okay, Demola is a strong and passionate people manager and a leader with competence in multiple marketing disciplines. So today we have someone who cuts across, of course, has a handle leadership outside Nigeria, in Nigeria, outside Nigeria, in Asia, in some parts of Africa, Middle East. Is someone who has done some sales. So it's not just marketing. Sometimes salespeople are very angry at marketing people. They just say some marketing people sit in the office and they design and say that it will work. And then it's the salespeople that know whether it will work or it will not work. So today we have somebody who has cut across both disciplines, and he'll be sharing with us from his experience, from his learnings about how you can grow your leadership. Okay, good enough. We all know that leadership is not something we are born with. It's something we can learn. So join me today as I welcome to share with us from his experiences, Demola Omitayo. Demola, the mic is in your hands.
Okay. I'm not holding a mic, but it's in my hands, like you said. Good evening again, everyone. Thank you, Diolu, for the kind words. So I'll just dive in really quickly. Like Diolu said, I'm aware that we've gone through Envision, we've gone through Engage and Enlist with Alex, who is also a very great friend and a leader I respect very much. We used to work in the same organization some time ago. I think he must have mentioned that as well. So what I aim to do today, guys, is, like Diolu said, to speak to you about growing your leadership from the perspective of leaders empower. And to talk through that, I thought it would be very useful to employ, the 6 horsemen of Rudyard Kipling. The what and the why, the when and the how, and the where and the who. I think that would help us to structure our thinking as I share this evening. My objective is just very simple. I know you've heard a lot of thoughts and principles about leadership, so I don't think I'm bringing anything new to you this evening. I'll just remind you of some of the principles, yeah? I will share a couple of experiences as we go along, as they are relevant to whatever we are discussing at that time. I'm hoping to stimulate some reflection for everyone that is listening this evening. I think there are about 51 of us on now. And then potentially get you to act after today or coming right after the quiz that Diolu said we were going to have after this session. So that's my objective, really. And to help me, I have just two points on the agenda. What I've called first things first, and then the 6 horsemen. So first things first, basically, is you cannot have any conversation about leadership empowerment, leadership engagement, leadership envisioning, or any of the E's that we'll be discussing without first coming to what I would like to call the same page as far as what we mean when we say leadership. So I will spend the first 5 minutes or so to talk about what my thoughts are, my perspective on leadership, and then use that to dovetail into empowerment as a specific area of leadership using the 6 horsemen that I've talked about. We'll look at what it is, which is where we'll start. What is empowerment? Why should we empower? When, how, where, and who? And then we'll summarize, and then we'll take a few questions if we still have time. Sounds like a plan? All right,
Yep.
Let's go. So first things first, what is leadership? I know we are all very familiar with the terminology leadership. And I thought it would be useful at this point, as I begin to talk about empowerment, to delineate leadership from management. So leadership is definitely not management. Management is not leadership. For the purpose of this evening, I'd like to focus on talking about leadership as a service. Leadership is a service. And for those of us that, are in a certain stage in our lives where, we have servants, you can relate to the word servants as it relates to service. Someone who does something for another person is a servant. Oftentimes we think about it, in a more humble way, where we think about the person that we're paying to serve us. But, strictly speaking, theoretically, someone who does something for another person is serving that person. So I want to come out to leadership from that perspective this evening. Leadership is service. Leadership is not about you. Leadership is about the person that you are serving. Leadership is you giving to the other person, not necessarily to yourself. Yep. So that's the first thing I would like to establish. The second thing is, again, I know I said leadership is not about you, but the parallel is that leadership is about you. Leadership is about you. John Maxwell, who is a very famous leadership thought leader, talked about how leadership, it all starts and ends with leadership. It rises and it falls on leadership. Anything that is going to happen, whether we're going to make a success of our businesses, make a success of our organizations, is about the leader. And at this point, I'd like to say to you that, oftentimes when we talk about the leader, we're thinking of the person that is at the forefront. We're thinking of the person who is placed most highly in the organization. Not necessarily, and I'll talk to that as I speak to empowerment. Leadership is not about a position. Leadership is about the person and what he is doing, what he is achieving in that setting, in that organization, in that team. There's this very, simple demonstration of leadership, if you look at that slide, where it talks about the leader is the one that takes the team and leads from the front and is driving the work from the front. So he takes hold of whatever needs to be done and he's leading the team to get it done. While the boss, at the bottom there, is the one who manages the team to get the work done. So he's sort of directing like a conductor in an orchestra, who doesn't play any instrument except that piece of wood, that he uses to flick and say, you play the A, you play this. He cues them in. Now, having said that, I think it's important to just say this last thing on this point now, that neither leadership nor management is wrong. Both have their place and both are required at different points in time. Oftentimes when we get into leadership seminars, we tend to downplay the importance of management. Neither of them is wrong. My all-time favorite way of describing the difference between a leader and a manager is something I heard very long ago when I started my career. And that is this: a leader helps us to decide which field we're cutting. So a leader helps us to cut the right field, while a manager helps us to cut the field right. Do you understand that? So the leader helps us to go to where we should be going, while when we are where we should be, the manager then steps in and helps us to do things right. So the manager puts the structure. He helps us to cut it right. So he tells us, cut from right to left with your shalanga, or what is it that we used to call it in school in those days, the cutlass, while the manager is that one that climbs the tree and looks around and says, oh no, we're cutting the field to the north. Yeah, neither of them is wrong. Both of them have their place. So that's the first thing I wanted to cover. Yes. Now let's talk about some differences. And this is where I start talking about empowerment without having defined empowerment. Leaders focus on sustainable solutions and not quick fixes. So the leader will teach you and show you why and how something needs to be done, while the boss or the manager will tell you what to do. Okay, so that's the first point. As a leader, you need and this is one of the reasons why, and I'll talk to this when I talk about why you need to empower your team members or the other people within that organization. If you are building any organization or a country like Nigeria, for example, we need to be thinking of sustainable solutions, not quick fixes. You know, I think Alex must have said something about that when he was talking about Envision. It's for the long term. You are in it for the long haul. You shouldn't be so narrow-minded and be thinking about today. What shall I eat today? How will I get my business to grow today? How will I make the profit today? No, it's not. And I tell my sales team that it's not the sale you make today. It's the ability to make that sale every other time that you come there. And if you have that perspective and you approach it from that point of view, you will do things very differently as a leader or as a manager or wherever you find yourself in life. So you should focus as a leader on the sustainable solutions, put in structures that will take you for the long haul, not things, you know, that will just fizzle out. It's not about what you must do now. That's why there's a plurality of ideas that is required in leadership. You are not always the smartest person in the room, okay? And that's another reason why you need to empower. Recognize that people think differently, people approach problems differently, and solutions are, you know, different kinds of solutions for the same sort of problem. Yeah. The second point I wanted to make is that as a leader, you need to have what they call a high level of emotional quotient. Lead with high EQ, not necessarily the IQ. So you should be a people expert and not necessarily a subject matter expert. You should be able to analyze people, not just problems, as a leader. That would help you to engage them. It will help you to drive them. It will help you to communicate with them. If you're talking to me, you know, in a way that I don't understand, you see, then I will not do what you need done. I remember one of my postings once, and this is an experience that I've shared before with a couple of friends. You see, I was in a place where, you know, long before social distancing became a thing, social distancing was a thing there. You don't get into people's personal space. And there was this person I was going to speak with, you know, and I got into his space and I was saying things like, all right, so the plan today is this, that, and the other. And very graciously, he listened, he let me finish. And then 10 minutes into the conversation, he says, you know, it would have worked better if you had said to me what you said earlier. First of all, you were too close, so I felt threatened. And it would have worked better if you had said, would you mind if we did this, that? I will feel like you're asking my permission. And then we're still going to do what you want to do. We're still going to do what you want me to do, but it will be with my consent. And that way, I will go the long haul with you. It was a very small thing, but it was very instructive for me, that I needed to step back and understand that it's not about my brain and the way I'm looking at it and the fact that, yes, authority position, I'm the senior most person in the room and this is what I want. It's about carrying that person on a journey, because what I needed done, I wouldn't have to do it myself. It wasn't my place to do. I needed someone else to do it, and I needed to communicate with him. So he was asking at that point that, Demola, can you empower me to say yes, rather than you saying this is what we will do? And that is very instructive if you're going to lead people and empower them. Third thing is that you lead with vision. And I won't dwell on this because that's one of the E's that I know we're talking about this leadership seminar. You need to be driven by passion and purpose. There is some way you are going. There is a reason why you are going somewhere. And if you cannot communicate that reason, people will not follow you. Yeah, and that's the difference between a leader and a manager. The manager is driven by the fear of failure. Let it not be in my regime. Let it not be in my time that this thing didn't work. Whereas the manager is, whatever I am doing, the leader, pardon me, is whatever I'm doing at this point in time is contributing to take us across the bridge closer to the purpose for which we were set up as an organization. I won't dwell on that. Now, this is very important as a leader. You cannot claim to be a leader if we cannot see the other leaders you have created. And this was a very, very profound statement by Jack Welch. You know, he says, before you're a leader, success is all about growing yourself. But when you become a leader, success is all about growing others. It's about you pouring yourself into other people. And please put this at the back of your mind, because when we start talking about the different, the 6 horsemen of empowerment, you will see this come through. Now, I must qualify this statement about leaders creating leaders. By definition, you know, when I talked about how a leader is that person, you know, that tells us whether we're cutting the right field as against we're cutting it right. You know, you need to be mindful of the fact that as a leader who is creating other leaders, we're not saying that you need to clone yourself. No, creating other leaders is really the concept that we're talking about today. Empowering them, giving them an opportunity to lead, giving them an opportunity to take over that authority that you have today, and then demonstrate that they, to themselves, to you, and to every other person watching, that they can actually make good on that authority that you have given them. That's what it is to create a leader. It's not about you saying, okay, I am a humble leader, therefore every other person must be a humble leader. Or my perspective is servant leadership. Therefore, if you are not into the servant leadership ethos, you are not a leader. No, that is not leadership. Everybody is different. There's a plurality in it. As many different persons. You see, the kind of leader you become has a lot to do with your exposure, your experience, your temperament, your personality. All those things have a play in the kind of leader you become. And if I don't have exactly the same exposure, experience, personality, temperament that you have, chances are that I will not lead like you. Chances are that I will not develop in the same kind of leader that you are. And therefore, you cannot clone me. You cannot force me to be the kind of leader that you are. So I find this as something very instructive. Leaders create leaders. If you are going to tell me you're a leader, then I must be able to see some other people coming that you have created. Okay? And then now, as I begin to dive into leaders and power, I made a comment earlier about how in creating leaders, you delegate authority. You delegate authority. Oftentimes when we're talking about, you know, I'm a manager, I'm a leader, I'm in a position of authority, and I'm delegating, you tend to delegate the tasks and the responsibilities, which are very different to the place of authority, which you should delegate as a leader who is going to empower. Let me give you a couple of examples. Now, imagine that in your place of work, in some structured organizations, you have what they call a delegation of authority policy, yeah, where if Mr. A is not around, then Mr. B's signature can work to sign this particular check or to sign off on this task or this job. That is delegation of authority. It is very different to my boss comes and says, I need you to do this analysis and connect it to that particular analysis. Then I call two team members and say, you do portion A, you do portion B. That is a delegation of tasks. It's very different to whenever you sign, it carries the same authority as if the CEO signed. That is empowerment. Because then when I stand as that person who has been delegated authority to, I am able to then command the same authority as you. Now, at this point, just to make sure I don't forget to say it later, for those people that take up the mantle of authority, you also need to be mindful of two things. If it works, you want to be celebrated. Therefore, if it doesn't work, you should be willing to take the responsibility for it not having worked. You see, that is the thing about authority. And that is the kind of analysis you want to do about your people that you're working with, the members of your team, the people in your business, the people that you come in contact with, if you are going to delegate authority to. So it is not someone who can do the task. It is someone who can take the authority and use it right. Someone who will own it. Someone who will be accountable for it. That's the kind of analysis you need to do. You don't just delegate authority to just anybody. You know, there's this Yoruba saying. I probably am not speaking to a room full of Yoruba people, but in English, the translation is, the mother bends to carry the child who lifts up his own hand. Yeah. Now, you need to be sure that that individual that you're about to take that your mantle of authority and give to has lifted his hand. He has demonstrated, that's the English word for it. He has demonstrated that I am able to own this. I can be accountable for this. So that's the final thing I wanted to say about leaders. They empower. As now I begin to talk about what is empowerment, and then we talk about the 6 horsemen of empowerment. For Diolu, who knows me, and maybe a few other people I don't know, I always like to start at the beginning. All right, so let's go to the beginning. What's the source? The word empowerment is from the word empower, and Merriam-Webster's dictionary is always a very good place to start. It tells us that empower is to give official authority. That's the word again, authority or legal power to someone. Empower is to give, is to give or delegate authority to, usually subordinates in an organization, is to give qualities or abilities to, is to increase the confidence, the rights, and the status of someone. That is empower. If you look at the picture I put by the side there, it is very important, and I'll talk to it. When you are going to empower someone, you need to be communicating the goals. You need to be looking at the person's track record of this kind of thing. The attitude is very important. The performance level of that person. Is this someone you can support? Someone who is humble enough to take your support, and someone who can think by themselves, someone that you do not necessarily have to spoon feed. Now, empowerment means that you give that person authority. It means that you put power into the person. It can also mean that you bring energy and enthusiasm out of. And we'll speak about that in a couple of minutes. When you are empowering someone, you need to refrain as a leader from doing anything that reduces their energy or enthusiasm for what they are doing. For example, I tell you that you can go ahead and sign that check. And then I turn around and tell the auditor or whoever and say, every time he signs, you need to let me know what he's signing about. It connotes that you don't trust me. It will remove the enthusiasm for me to actually go forward and do that thing. Let me give you an example. So I was working in an organization. Well, I've spent quite a long time in my current organization, so you probably know it's this same organization, all right? But there was a particular year, okay, where I got the short end of the straw, and I was going to work during the Christmas period and close the year for the organization. So we had, my boss and I, and my peers and everybody, we had agreed, these are the numbers that we are committing to for this year, all right? And then everybody went off on Christmas holiday, leaving me to run the ship, you know. And we ran the ship up until I think it was the 26th of December that year. And I needed to make a call because something happened. I needed to make a decision on 1 or 2 metrics. So there was a metrics of volume, there was a metrics of profit, there was a metrics of cash flow, there was a fourth metrics, NTO, you know. And I needed to make a call at that point and say to myself, which ones are unforgivable in these 4 metrics? Which one is forgivable? And I made the call to sacrifice volume on the altar of profits, cash, and NTO. And then, yeah, that was the call I made myself and another pair of mine was supporting. And then 2 days later, we had a conversation with the boss to say, yeah, we sat down together, we looked at what was going on, and this is the decision we had reached. And then he went ballistic on me. You know, it was like, no, I stood up 2 weeks before now and said, and in the whole conversation was about, I said. I was like, no. This is no longer about the targets of the organization. It's about you feeling like we are embarrassing you. And that was just, you know, a pin in my balloon. And I was like, all right, we're going to do exactly what you want us to do. We're not taking any initiative again, you know, and it's for the next couple of days, it just took the wind out of my sails, you know, up until the point where he recognized that he had done something to disempower me. So we started out with him saying, you are in charge. And then 2 days later, he came saying, no, you're being in charge is embarrassing me. And that was, a complete turnaround, and it disempowered me. Now, in retrospect and in reflecting on it, it wasn't so much about him like I felt at that time. It was actually about the organization and the commitment that we had made and how he viewed our not meeting those commitments. You see, so it was really about organization. I was about the organization, but there was a little bit of, a miscommunication or a difference in our approach. Ultimately, we did what I recommended because that was what wasn't going to break the machine at that point. But it was a very instructive experience for me at that point, where on the one hand, you're running the ship and then you're looking over my shoulder and you're telling me, no, you have to do it the exact way I want it done. You need to be very careful about that. When you give the power away, when you give the authority away as a leader, when you empower somebody, give that power away. And I'll speak to that in a few minutes as well. So now let's talk about the 6 horsemen. Why? Why should you empower people that work with you? Peter Drucker, another very fine gentleman, said this. He said, only 3 things happen naturally in organizations: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else needs leadership. That is a powerful statement, if ever there was one. That if you are going to move your organization, if you are going to move your business, if you are going to move your team from point A to point B, you need to lead them in that direction. Otherwise, there will be friction, there will be confusion, and there will be underperformance. So why do I need to empower people? You need to empower them because empowerment, when you give the authority away as a leader, you build trust. And trust, guys, for the purpose of this, is a two-way thing. Trust is two-way. One, you build trust for that individual where he starts thinking, this person trusts me. And because he's able to do what you ask him to do, you also trust him. And that helps you to delegate more authority, to give more away, and help you to visualize or to envision more of the future where you want to take the organization to. That is why you need to empower. It builds trust. And I'll talk about why trust is important in the next slide. When you empower them, it gives you an opportunity, something we discussed earlier, to assess this individual's capability. Is this person as good? Can this person go the long haul? It helps you to begin to do a little bit of succession planning of some sorts, depending on the kind of organization you want to build. It also gives you an opportunity to develop that person's capability. So after you've assessed him and you've seen, okay, here are the areas of improvement, this opportunity where you give him the authority, where you give the authority away, gives you an opportunity to develop him, because then you're able to see this is where he can stretch, this is where he cannot stretch, and these are the things that I need to do. Yeah. And these 3 things, guys, these 3 things are important. Why? Because your organization's survival depends on it. Your organization's survival depends on it. If you don't empower, if everything revolves around you, if you don't give the authority away, if you don't find a plurality of ways of getting things done, your organization will die with you. And there are so many organizations that have died that we can look at. There are so many of them that are nowhere to be found anymore because the leadership didn't pass the authority on. Yeah?
Yep.
D. Hawk, the founder of Visa, he said, if you want to lead, you need to devote at least 40% of your time to leading yourself. And that is important. That's the second point here. If you give the power away, if you empower people, it gives you time, downtime, for you to also develop and grow. Nobody knows it all. Guys, there is no ultimate leader. Barack Obama is not the best leader in the world. He has not yet been fully developed. He is still growing. He is still developing. God bless his heart. Nelson Mandela, before he passed on, was also still growing his leadership. up until the last interviews, he was still talking about some things that he regretted not knowing when he was in power. Nobody knows it all, guys. You still have an opportunity to grow and develop. You still have an opportunity to grow and develop. And if you're going to take those opportunities, someone else has got to be taking the responsibility that currently belongs to you. You need to be giving the power away. It also helps you to accelerate the growth of your organization. It helps you to move people along very quickly, because it's not just your brain that is working in the organization, because you have passed the power on, because someone else is thinking, because someone else is stepping up, because someone else is taking responsibility. Yeah, that is one of the most fundamental things. This is the foundation of it. If you get it right, that my organization depends on it, the growth and development of my organization depends on it, then you will empower your subordinates, you'll empower your team. And trust me, you can empower your boss. And we'll talk about that as well as we go on. Next horseman is when. So when should you empower? Only 2 times, guys. Only 2 times. Empower today and empower tomorrow. As long as it's called today, empower them. When it is called tomorrow, empower them. It's never too late and it's never too early. It is always a journey. Leadership in any organization, or even an organization's life cycle, is a marathon, not a sprint. There's a very powerful thought leader. Some of you might know him, Simon Sinek, that I respect a lot. You know, he talks about the business world and talks about how it's a game. He says there's an infinite game and there's a finite game. Yeah. You need to be thinking of your organization from an infinite perspective. The rules change. It's not about you. It's about the longevity. It will outlast you. It's not a finite game where there is an end. The rules are constant. The players are constant. No, think beyond you. Okay? So empower them today, empower them tomorrow. How should you empower? Now, here is where, you know, I would like to spend a little more time reflecting with you. How should you empower? So I've spent some time talking about the importance of you empowering your organization, empowering people. I've talked about how you need to empower them today, twice, today and tomorrow. Okay? Yesterday is too late. But then how should you do this? What's the message? How should you empower? First thing, guys, is you need to be self-aware. Remember, I talked about leadership and how EQ is a big component of leadership, emotional quotient. This is where the rubber meets the road on that. You need to be very self-aware. And there's something I learned, I think it was last year, this character traits check. For all of you listening to me, you probably have an idea of the kind of leader you want to be, okay? You have an idea of some people that you think are bad leaders and some people that you think are good leaders. What I will encourage you to do in this journey of self-awareness and empowerment is to spend some time on what I call the character trait check. Yeah, which is pick those leaders, the guy that you think is good, the guy that you think is bad, and ask yourself these questions. Why is this guy bad? Write it down. Why in your mind are you saying this particular leader is good? Write it down. List all those characteristics that make him bad and all the characteristics that make him good. Next step, check yourself. How many of these characteristics do you have? How many of these characteristics of that bad leader have you found or seen in yourself? When you do that, you go into the next level, which is the self-reflection. How can you get out of this one? How can you develop yourself on this one? So the good ones that you don't have, how do you develop? The bad ones that you found in yourself, how do you get away from it? How do you outgrow them? It's a self-reflection. Then you begin to put some boundaries in place. And this is what I call the self-regulation. I will not do that again. You start looking for in the church they call accountability partners, people that will check you when you make those mistakes, people that will check you when you do the wrong things. This is where, coaching and mentorship become really important. Remember on the last slide, I talked about how you need to be developing yourself. You are not done yet, okay? So this is where coaching and mentorship become important for you as a leader who is going to empower, and as a leader who is going to grow. Self-regulation. These people that you have good relationships with, people that are able to talk to you, that you listen, how can you get them to start helping you to grow? Okay? So this, I think, is very important. I'm spending this time to talk about you, you see, because if you're going to empower, the way to empower first starts with you. Okay? That's why how to empower, the first thing is you. You need to be aware. You need to lead yourself. You need to regulate yourself, and then you motivate yourself. All right? That is extremely important. If you're going to empower anybody, if you're going to give the authority away, you need to understand yourself. Then we go into the second one now, which is now talking about the people that you are empowering. You need to be communicating very clearly, guys. If you're ever going to empower, you don't just empower tacitly. It is active. Empowerment is active. And my wife and I were joking. This is not about buying pure water to empower. Hey, you are not. This is not the empowerment where you buy pure water and say, "I'm empowering a community." No. Or you empower a wheelbarrow. Yeah, it's very different. Yes. No, this is not empower. Yeah, it is active. And to empower someone, you are giving the authority away. You're asking him to use your authority for something. You need to set the boundaries and the expectations from this individual. You need to communicate very clearly and tell him, by way of information, this is what I need done, and here is my power to give you that. Yeah, here's the power to give you that. I'm sure some of you here know I'm a church boy. When Elijah was giving the mantle to Elisha, the same thing happened. He was talking about give me sevenfold. And the give me double portion was what he said. And that is exactly what happened. One of them had, I think it was 7 miracles. The other did 14. He died by the 13th. It was his mantle that did the 14th miracle for him. So that's really what it's about. You need to be informing these people. Tell them this is the expectation. These are the boundaries. This is what I need you to do. That is the same conversation that will help you to ascertain knowledge level of this individual. You will motivate him. So it's either a carrot, which I recommend at this point, rather than a stick, because once you put a stick into the equation, then that becomes fear. Remember, we talked about managers. Managers put fear in the equation. Leaders don't. It's about the passion and the purpose. Yep. So you motivate him. Talk about the reward and the next steps. So after you have been very clear in the communication and you have told him, this is what I expect. Here is my mantle of leadership. Here is my power. Here is my authority. Go on and do it. The next thing, guys, is that you support this individual. Support him. And, for those of you that have gone through situational leadership conferences and all kinds of trainings, there's no end to the models, But here's something that I found very instructive, and it's from an American actor, Black American actor, Jamie Foxx. Someone was asking him about, your children, your father, blah, 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 and talked about how do you support your children? And, he thought for a minute and he said, I liken it to teaching them how to shoot with a bow and an arrow. My job, talking about supporting them, remember, this is you, the leader, supporting the person you're empowering. My job is, first of all, to ensure that they have the right bow. We're cutting the right field again, remember? They have the right bow, yeah? Show them how to hold it and how to place the arrow. In step 1, you've communicated the boundaries and the expectations and where we're going, yeah? It is now their job, and this is part of the communication, to pull the string on the arrow, and it is their job, and that's why that is in capital, to decide when to release the arrow. If I have been clear, they will not release the arrow until they have aimed right at the target. They will not release the arrow after they have moved from the target. They will release the arrow right on time. That is support, guys. You give the power to decide to that individual. That is how you empower. That is how you empower. The other thing that I'd like to talk about, very quickly about this how is this concept of learning. Concept of learning. Oftentimes, and I as a father, I've had to catch myself and retrain myself on this. Sometimes we correct too quickly. And the purpose of correction, I mean, Deolu is a scientist. We talk about feedback, which was first talked about in physics. You know, energy is never lost. It's just changed into a different form of energy. And that's what feedback is. It goes and it comes. Feedback is a very big part of learning, guys. And I put there that people learn by doing, but it doesn't end there. They need to reflect on, either actively or passively. So it's active when they are the ones doing the reflecting. It's passive when you are helping them to do the reflecting. So let them fail. And I put an acronym there that I've coined. You know, we're talking about this in my organization recently, how, you know, we're quick to share success stories. So somebody in Canada does something fantastic, and we say, oh, can you share with that person in Dubai? Or somebody in Japan, you know, one of my previous markets, does something outstanding, and we say, oh, please send it to them in South Africa, let them see it. But we are not very quick to talk about the failures, simply because we are afraid that, you know, people will haunt us and talk. Now, failures by themselves are not good. Don't misunderstand me. The learnings in the failure is a diamond. It's a gem. And so for me, let people fail, but take it as a learning opportunity. So I put in there a previously unidentified learning experience. That's the way I like to approach failure. I see it as a previously unidentified learning experience. So when I fail, I step back and say, what happened here? What can I learn? Because that is important, you know, and then you focus on the lesson and not the blame. That way, that person will build trust that when things go awry, my leader has got my back. It's an opportunity for you to coach as well. These are all things that you've heard in situational leadership. Like I said, not bringing anything new, just reminding you of the principles. These are all things you've heard before. Yeah, but this is how you then do it, with a view to building another leader. Then you need to celebrate. You need to celebrate. That's also very key when you empower, because if the person did wrong, you will have a conversation around the learning. So if the person does it right, you need to celebrate it. You need to make noise and say, well done. That was exactly what I wanted. Fantastic. You are empowering that person. Put yourself in their shoes. I'm sure there have been times when you've heard someone say to you, well done, you did something fantastic. I really like it. And it felt good. Yeah. The final thought on how to empower, guys, is let go. When you give the power, give the power. So let go and truly let go. Then where do you empower? That's, we're almost done now. Where do you empower? Everywhere. Everywhere. You know, not just in your office, anywhere you find yourself. Leadership is not a title, it is a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. And like I said, you need to empower twice, today and tomorrow. And it needs to be everywhere there is an opportunity. Look out for the opportunities. There are leaders everywhere. There are leaders everywhere. So look out for the opportunities. Who can I empower today? Who can go around, you know, with a bag of authority and start dishing it out as you find the people that come across your path. Start dishing out the authority and say, you take, you take. That's how to empower them. Yep. And then the final thoughts, guys, is who do you empower? Who do you empower? There are three people that you empower. You can empower your boss. You can empower upwards. You know, there are books, multiple books. There was one by John Baldoni, The Subtle Art of Managing Up, Lead Your Boss, you know, Dare to Lead. There are all kinds of books there that talk about empowering upwards. You empower your peers. You know, you give them the authority. You take a part of theirs. People that are the same level as you, and then you empower downwards as well. Who the people I've called here, the subordinate. Everyone deserves a chance. There's this very powerful concept that I came across early days of my career. And I think it was, can't remember his name now, the gentleman who wrote 1 Minute Manager. Yeah, he was talking about how you go around giving people A's, putting A's on people's heads. It means that that person is not a failure. It means that subconsciously you're saying, this person can get the job done. Because believe me, everyone can be a leader. Everyone deserves a chance. Don't ever write anyone off. I remember, in my organization now, there are a couple of people that, we had written off, and today they made a complete turnaround and they are firing on all cylinders. Everyone deserves a chance. Everyone can lead. So, in summary, guys, leadership is not a rank or a position. Leadership is a lifestyle, is a state of mind. Leaders make sure we're cutting the right field, yeah? And managers make sure we're cutting the field right. There's a place for both. Leaders sharpen the people, they sharpen the saw. It's about delivering today, preparing your tomorrow, guys. It's not all about today, get the results today. Leaders identify and support who holds the saw. Leaders must not always be the best grass cutters. Pardon my typo there. You don't always have to be the person who knows how to cut the grass the best. Yeah? Leaders give the power away every time. So again, where do you empower? Every time. And again, guys, leadership is not a position. The first thing there, and that's why I'm ending again, leadership is a decision. You can lead from wherever you are. Thank you very much. You can have questions now if you have.
Okay. Thank you very much, Demola. I think the notes are full, and I hope that the heads are full as well. We take the notes and we take action with it. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for question and answers. There's a question tab in front of you there, Q&A. You can put your questions there. I know that some people usually wait for somebody to bail the cat and ask the first question, and then we'll have more questions at the time we have. I want to give you a piece of a little gist. Put your questions, make sure your questions are one of the first 10 questions or first 5 questions so that we can get to your questions. I wouldn't like it. Yesterday, we had to shut the presentation with about 12 questions unanswered because there was no more time. We had exceeded the time, taking 10 minutes extra, and the questions were still pouring in. So today, we're talking about leaders empower, okay? And I want you to put your questions out there. Are there things you want to know better? All of us are leaders. All of us have people that we lead. We have to lead ourselves. I like what you said. 40% of your energy should be spent. If you want to be a leader, you should spend 40% of leadership time empowering yourself and leading yourself as well. So very quickly, I'd like us to begin to populate our questions. I will bail the cards because people usually try to come up very slowly. So I will start and say, is there, you said, who do we empower? And you said, your boss, your peers, your subordinates. What if you are afraid that if you give this person power, it will be a problem? What about the person's ability? What limit do you have in empowerment? And I like the example you gave of somebody who gives the power to write a check. And I think, before I give somebody power to write my check, then, but yeah, please tell us.
For me, it's really very simple. There are two things. It's either you do or you don't, okay? And if you are going to do, if you remember when I talked about the why, I talked about the capability assessment, how that is the opportunity for you to know, can this person do it? The first step of the why is trust, and it's fundamental. So if I'm going to ask you to write my check, I must trust you. It's part of the equation. I must know that you will not embezzle the funds. It's all part of your track record. You see, that's the capability assessment portion. That's where, emotional intelligence, emotional quotient for a leader is very, very key. Very key. I heard the story. I can't remember the names now. There are leaders in Nigeria, positional leaders now in Nigeria, where someone was talking about how in their school, there was an election, and he was running, and there was this other gentleman that was running. He had a friend who was in the camp of the other person, who he expected to run with him. And he asked the president and said, no, based on A, B, C, D policies that you have, I am going to support this person. And he supported the opponent till the end. And the opponent won the election. 20 years down the line, this other individual that lost the election in school was now in a position of authority and was looking for a chief of staff. And then he sent word and said, can you fetch this other person for me? They had fallen out and, or gotten out of touch. And then he brought the other person and said, you are going to be my chief of staff. And that person was like, the last time we had any conversation about politics, I was on the other side. I said, that's exactly why. You didn't abandon your principal because we were friends. That is the kind of quality I'm looking for. So there's something about, he could have said, oh no, that person didn't work for me. But he knew what he needed in a chief of staff. Someone who would cut through all the clutter, cut through all the BS, and say, this is what we need to be doing. So it's really important that you understand where people are. People are at varying levels. If you've never handled $1 million before, you've all heard the story of the American Barbers Association, who got a homeless man, made him up and put him up. And a week later, the man was looking homeless again, So it's what is in the person that you will be able to interpret as an emotionally intelligent leader. And then you empower him in that direction. Someone might not be good enough for him to empower financially. Give authority to write your check. But he might be the person that will then drive the check to the bank to be cashed. So everyone has got their use.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to bail the cat. And of course, we have 11 questions now, so we have to keep going. So this one says, do true leaders give up? I'm sure you can see the questions as well. I'll just try and give them voice. It says, do true leaders give up? Empowering your boss will be a serious one. How can it be made easy?
There is, so as long as that individual, okay, let me look at it this way. When I say empower your boss, you need to be thinking about it from the point of view of you are asking him to empower you, asking him to give you power. So you need to empower him to empower you. And that is by you building the trust. So that's the first thing I need to say. So when I say empower your boss, you need to be able to lead your boss to the point where your boss trusts you implicitly. So after that conversation, that I told you guys I had a couple of years ago in one of the organizations, anytime something like that is going to happen, he doesn't look back. Since we've had that initial discussion, after the whole thing died down, we had a one-on-one and I said, A, B, C, D is what you did that you probably shouldn't have done. Here is where the ideas should have been. And he agreed, yes, your idea was probably better, blah, blah, blah. Since then, whenever we're in that kind of discussion or situation, he just calls me and says, here's the problem. What are we going to do? Leave it with me. And he leaves it with me. That is how to empower your boss. He needs to trust you. That's how, there's no other way to empower your boss. He needs to be, you need to make him comfortable enough to say, this guy can get it done. Then there's also how you talk. There's also the communication to him. So if you're the kind of person who believes your boss doesn't know and you know better than your boss, trust me, he will never empower you and you will never be empowered. Yep. You need to be demonstrating to him that we are in this together. You are buying into a vision that he is selling. And that's the way we are going to go. Yep. So you need to be very, very smart. You need to be very careful how you make these things happen. But to empower your boss, trust is implicit in that relationship.
Okay. Someone is asking, what do you think of a leader who changes work modalities or performance framework too frequently?
Now, let's, two things. One, that's a question of nomenclature. So is that leadership or is that management, first of all? Yep. So you're talking about performance framework, modalities. Remember, it's about, are we cutting the field from right to left or are we cutting it from left to right? That, for me, if you ask me, is management. Yeah. Because vision, which is what leads a leader or an organization, is not something that you change willy-nilly. So if the vision has changed, why did it change in 2 months? Did we not have the right vision before? Were we chasing the wrong direction? So for me, that is more of management, and management styles differ. And a manager, I have the right, you have the right as a manager. If we've tried something from a management perspective and it's not working, we change it. We change it and we move on. Remember, I said sometimes when you talk about leadership, people tend to, pour dirt on management. Neither of them is wrong. There's a place for both. If we don't have managers, things will go. Remember what we said, Drucker said, it's about the chaos in the organization. That's what's going to happen. Yep.
Okay. Someone is asking if you'll be able to get the slides. Another person is asking.
I can share them with Deolu.
Yeah, okay. Do leaders give up?
Now, that's a very interesting question. Do leaders give up? As leaders, no. On ideas, sometimes yes. You pivot. You pivot. So we thought this was the direction. We went this way for a long time. You know. So, for example, if you don't pivot, you will die. If you don't pivot, you will die. You will have a Kodak moment. You see, you will have a Kodak moment, and that's death. You see, there's this concept from another business leader that I really absolutely love, Jeff Bezos. He talks about day one. He talks about day one. I don't know if you guys have heard the concept of day one, where for him, it's about, he says it's always day one because we are always talking about the new thing. We're always moving with the times. Because if you don't change at the right time, what happens is that you stagnate, yeah, and then you begin to decline, and ultimately you die as an organization. You die as an organization, and that is the most painful thing as a leader. So leaders do not give up leading. You can't give up an idea. So he didn't start selling Amazon the way Amazon is now. Okay, he did something completely different. Oh, by the way, guys, he's smiling to the bank now. Do you know why? Because before the pandemic started, he and his team were working on logistics. They're working on building a solid logistic business, as if they didn't have enough already in their hands. Now that this COVID-19, as you know, changed the way we work, that logistic business that they built a couple months ago before has become the mainstay. Jeff Bezos was the richest man in the world, stopped being the richest man due to divorce. He's again the richest man in the world and richer than he was before. That is leadership. That is a leader that moves. He didn't give up. He didn't say, okay, now I have big warehouses, I've got robots, I've got pickup points, I've got Amazon Prime, I've got video, I've got this, I've got that, therefore I can rest. No, he said, what is the next big thing? It's about convenience, it's about logistics, getting from point A to point B at the right time with the right quality. And now he's smiling to the bank again. That, my friends, is leadership. You do not give up leadership. You can pause an idea, you can pivot from another one.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm sure the person that asked that question is getting a lot more value than they desire to get. Somebody's asking a question here. You said leaders communicate effectively. He says, I have this issue with my team members. Sometimes you give instructions to one's best knowledge only for you to see otherwise. How do you communicate effectively?
So this one, guys, this is a personal opinion. Personal opinion. So take it, don't take it. If I say something to you and you don't get it, I never blame you. I blame me. That's my way of looking at it. So remember, I'm working within the confines of my thought process, which is I didn't say it right. It's the same way. Maybe I'm a little too hard on myself when it comes to reflection and feedback to myself, where I think, okay, this person is not an idiot. So in an organization, remember that there was a stage gate. And this is what I tell all my team members, that for you to be in this organization, you went through the test, you went through the assessment center, you're one of the smartest people in the world. Okay? So no gainsaying that, first of all. So if I did say something to you that you didn't understand, then I wasn't as clear. But what I will not do is to end up with that assumption without clarifying it. So I will have a conversation with you. Here is what we were planning to do. Here's what we ended up doing. Where was the breakdown? Then I take that away. And the next time, because there will be a next time, guys, to me empowering you with this again. The next time, I will work on the basis of that conversation we had and make sure that I clarify everything. So if I say ABC, I will make sure you're not going to go and do BCA. Yeah? We are going to be clear that what I said was A, B, and C. But then if it then becomes a problem that is recurrent, that this individual continues to do the wrong things every time, then it's not my communication, it's probably a competence issue. That I will fix.
Okay.
So you need to get to the root of the matter. There's a need for a root cause analysis. Is it my communication? First time my communication, second time my communication. By the third time, and we're making the same mistakes, then it's a competence challenge. And that's when I put on my management hat, and then we look for interventions to fix that.
Okay. So I'll put 3 questions together. We're running off the track already, but we'll try and see if I can cover as much as possible. Someone's asking, sir, the books on who to empower for different people. So the person is asking for a book, maybe a book recommendation. Another person here is saying it's very difficult to give away power in this part of the world. Trust is a rare commodity. How do we combine this?
You know, and I'm going out on a limb here, guys, but if you find it very difficult to trust, can you be trusted? Why is it that the first thought is that we cannot trust you? When you go outside the country and they treat you like they treat Nigerians, you feel bad. But you come back here and you treat Nigerians even worse. You mouth the country, oh, Nigeria, we can never get it right. Oh, that is it not in Nigeria? Ah, that's why it's doing. So fix it internally first, guys.
Yeah.
That would be my comment on that. I could be wrong. Maybe I don't have the context.
I support.
That would be my comment.
I support. There's a proverb in Nigerian language that addresses that, that somebody who is used to doing something has a tendency to suspect every other person of the thing that they are capable of doing.
Correct.
Someone is asking, so I think that's done. Book recommendations, I think you can do later. Someone is asking, how do you handle a situation where your trust you put on someone is betrayed? You trusted someone and the person betrayed it, yeah.
There's no rule on that one. It depends on the situation. The way you'd handle trust issues from a marriage situation, infidelity, is very different to the way you handle trust from a bounced check. Is also very different to the way you handle trust from a forged signature. It's also very different to the way you handle trust from a driver, who didn't come to work when you needed him. There are 2 very different things. So there really isn't, it depends on the situation. But my encouragement would be, first of all, try to mend fences. Only after you have done, everything possible should you then treat that person like an infidel. So first get the elders of the church to mediate, get the community to mediate, have a one-on-one. If only after that, then you begin to treat like an infidel.
Okay, very good. Good. There's a question here, and as a leader, what do you do when people tend to take you for granted? I think it's close to the same question that the person says, how do you handle the risk of being undermined after delegating authority to others? Is it ideal for an individual to strive to becoming a leader at the same time a manager?
Okay, so the second question first, and maybe you help me with the first question if I forget it.
Okay.
Is it possible to strive to become a leader and a manager? Manager is positional, but leadership is individual. You can lead from where you are. You can lead from where you are. I mean, I've had my kids step into a position of leadership when we were doing something together. They are my children, you see, but that is a totally different thing from back in the office or when it comes to homework. At that point, I am the boss. I'm managing them to do the homework because I know it better than they do. So you can be both. There is no rule. And remember, not one is better than the other. It depends on the situation. Both of them, the person that helps us to cut the right field and the person that helps us to cut the field right, are correct.
Okay. The other question that you jumped is being undermined or being taken for granted.
So again, that is something, that in my perspective, it's a question of communication and honest feedback. So first of all, internalize it. Why do I feel undermined? Why do I feel like this person has undermined my authority? Is it a question of my humility? Is it a question of my ego? Or was there really some wrongdoing? If there was a wrongdoing, then we need to sort out the wrongdoing. You see, if you can separate emotions from the actual situation, it will help us. It will help us. Again, to the comment I made about EQ. I watched a clip of an Obama interview. I don't know if it was a campaign or something, and this lady went on and on and on at him. He was the president and he was addressing them, and he kept quiet, waited for the tirade to be over. Then he spoke and said, if you listen, now I've listened to you. If you listen, you will hear me. Then she started again and said, no, let me stop you there. You have spoken. So he exerted his authority at that point. But nobody could point to him and say that was ego. No, that was him listening. He was being very empathetic. He took it in his stride. He was the most powerful man in the world. Fast forward to a couple years later, where similar thing happened with a certain other person, and he asked them to bundle the person out. He said, you're a really bad reporter. That's why your station is not going to do well. Blah, 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 blah. Those are exactly the same situation, but handled very differently. One felt undermined, the other didn't. It always starts again, guys. Emotions, when it comes to ego and things like that, it's always internal. It's always internal. My teammates, my subordinates now, have asked me this kind of question that, sometimes when we are in a meeting with an external person, people don't know that apart from the sitting position, which they've started doing, nobody knows that you are the boss in the room. I said, no. My being the boss in the room doesn't make me smarter and doesn't mean we'll win this negotiation. All of us collectively working towards the same goal is the one confidence I have that we stand a chance to win the negotiation. So going in there and saying, yes, all right, so I'm the big guy here now, it doesn't change anything. I don't have to exert myself. I know I'm the boss. You know I'm the boss. These people don't need to know for us to come to where we want to come to. A win for us is a win for the organization, regardless of who was the boss in the room.
Okay, good. We have a few more questions. I think we'll take 4 more. The other ones that are coming behind, we'll just have to stay behind. So how do you conduct yourself when your boss's boss is showing interest in you and will always make effort to reach out informally, and your line managers are not comfortable with it?
Now, I'm not sure where to place this question.
Yeah.
So
I think it's how to manage corporate politics.
Is it politics? Is it a inappropriate relationship, power play? What exactly is it?
I think what it sounds like. If I can give you a little perspective.
That's what it sounds like, reaching out to you informally. Those things never end well.
Okay? I think, let me put it in perspective. I think what it's sounding like to me is the boss's boss recognizes the value that he's adding and basically is reaching him informally to say, well done, you're doing well. But it's not within the context of work. It's just saying, I can see what you're doing. But the line managers are not comfortable with it.
Oh no, that will never end well for you either. Okay? Because your line manager is the one that is in that meeting where you are having appraisals. You are not there. And before, sometimes depending on your level, your boss's boss doesn't even get to talk about you.
True.
In a talent review. So they would have asked you out of the conversation, out of the organization, and he will know 2 months later. And he's like, oh, where is Demola? I've not seen him in a few months. Oh, no, Demola has been fired. So it is important, and this is where you need to be smart as a manager. Have a very open conversation with your line manager to say, here's what the boss said. Because obviously for your line manager not to be comfortable, he knows. So if ever you are going to be sending work to the boss, copy your line manager. Make sure your line manager is aware. Go out of your way. I think that's the advice. Go out of your way to make your line manager comfortable. Otherwise, it won't end well. If you are close enough relationally with this highly placed boss, also have the conversation. You are putting me in a very difficult position. Boss A is not very happy, and for obvious reasons. So it's not from a point of view of reporting boss A. I'm being very open with you because I've had to do this before. And I didn't do it from a malicious point of view. And that's where the balance is. It's not about putting boss A down. It's about you aiming for something to work out. So boss A is not comfortable with it. I know you are comfortable with me. How can we help him? You see? So have a very clear, honest conversation with both of them. Otherwise, your life will be miserable.
I feel you. I think the last question for today, we'll end it with this one. It says, when you discover that the mindset of the fellow you want to lead is mediocre, and there's a need for urgent action, how do you manage results for organizational growth and the slow learner you want driven?
So remember again, you cannot ask a 10-year-old who cannot see over the steering to learn to drive. First of all, he needs to be the right height to learn to drive. If you go to an amusement park, there are certain rides that, depending on your height, you cannot take. So that slow learner needs to get to the level where he can take on the job before you give him that job. Yeah? And that's where you put on your management hat. This business needs to survive. If I have to delegate, I will delegate to the right person. I'm sure at some point, either during this leadership seminar or some other thing, you guys can look at it. There is this concept of situational leadership, where you look at the skill and the will of this individual, the skill-will matrix. So he's got a high skill, but no will, you motivate. He's got low skill, but high will. That kind of individual, you develop. You show him what to do, or you direct him, all right? The person that has the high skill and the high will is the person you delegate to. So if this person is not yet at that level, by all means, don't delegate. So maybe what I'll say is go look at things around situational leadership to help you to place where is this person from a skill and will point of view, and then decide, am I going to run an intervention to help his skill, or am I going to delegate to this individual?
Okay, I think very good. Thank you very much. I think we're going to end with the books you are recommending. So if there's any book you like people to read, you can please share and then give us your parting shots. Please, if you want to ask questions the next time, come early and put your questions there quickly enough. This will be made available on YouTube and you can link with it. So yes, Demola, back to you.
I'd like to keep things very simple, and there are loads of books that you could read. Loads of books, There is Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. There is Dare to Lead by, I think, Brene Brown. There's the one I mentioned earlier, which I would recommend that everybody reads, The 1 Minute Manager, Ken Blanchard. Yep. The 1 Minute Manager. I recommend that everyone reads that. Then any leadership book by Maxwell is great. Please pick that up and read. Developing the Leader Within You, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, Self-Leadership. All those books are great. But I think when I say keep it simple, start with the 1 Minute Manager, 1 Minute Manager, 1 Minute Leader. That 1 minute series, it will transform the way you view things. And this thing is really very simple, guys. Everybody, and maybe these are my parting words, everybody has the opportunity to be a leader. Early on, you need to determine what kind of leader will you be? What kind of leader do you want to be? Yep. There are all kinds of theories. There are all kinds of models of leadership. But the one thing that every one of them agrees on is that for you to be a leader, somebody must be following you. Why should you be followed?
Thank you very much. I think that's ending with the book that Alex Goma recommended, Why You Should Be Followed.
Interesting.
Yes, the book, title of the book is Why Should Anybody Follow You?
Who wrote that? I'm not sure I've read that book.
It was written by, I think, Bill something. Let me get the name of the book for you. It was written by Bill something.
No.
Why should anybody follow you? Title of the book. And
I'll find it.
Yeah, I can find it. Good. So, and I think it's very good tonight. I like to remind everybody, because sometimes we forget that we are the leaders in the room, and then we begin to ask ourselves, my leader is not like what they're describing, if my leader was empowering me like this, what would my life be like? And somehow we are pointing at someone else and all the other fingers are pointing back at us. So I want to say to somebody here today, you are a leader, okay? It's not about the title, it's about a decision. And you can begin to make that decision and begin to, embrace these principles, embrace this culture, and begin to take action. I want to say a very big thank you again to Demola Omitayo. I think I'm going to disturb you more. It's unfair and criminal for me not to have been disturbing you all these years.
Criminal.
you know that scripture now, and I like the Message translation, where the parable of talents, the guy who kept his one talent, the master told him it is criminal to live cautiously like this. For how can you have something and then you're hiding it? That's criminal.
No, I'm not hiding.
So I think it's criminal that I have talents and I'm not using it. So we'll be disturbing you a few times more. Thank you everybody for being here today. We finally had over.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Okay, excellent. So well done everybody. I'm sure you have learned something. I'm sure your notes are full, as mine are. Prepare for the quiz. We're going to do the quiz together for yesterday and today together. So please ensure that you feel it. These are what you also to learn. You guys are getting to enjoy this for free. I assure you, the things you are listening to for free today, some people will pay for them in the days to come. So congratulations. I'm congratulating you. Thank you for thanking me. But we're putting something together that will be useful for others in days to come. Some of these things also will get the materials and forward them to the group. So if you're not in the Grow Your Leadership group, then you are going to miss out on the materials. We'll share the materials in the group. We're also trying to do some work to convert all the talk into like small ebooks that can become valuable to people who want them, so that the knowledge can be available. If we fix leadership in Nigeria, and it's as basic as fixing it in individuals, Nigeria will become an amazing country. Some of the things you have said tonight, for example, are so exciting for me, and they resonate very deeply with me. To say, it shows in your attitude of complaining about Nigeria, your attitude of thinking that, of dealing with your next person without trust, of looking down on somebody else and feeling that it can't amount to much because it's a Nigerian. We're expressing self-fulfilling prophecies. So the way the world has looked at us, we're looking at ourselves and we're remaining in our same grind. But if we begin to change those conversations internally, daring to trust other people, daring, to empower others, daring to assess them and give them the level of trust at the level that they are and empower them adequately, guess what will happen? You'll become overqualified for where you are and you will need to take on a bigger space. And on like that. One day we will make the mistake of voting for the wrong president, but that wrong president will still be good enough to lead us. So imagine a day where we are competing, the competition is on between two exceptionally good leaders and we have to choose the worst one. It's still going to be a very good day for Nigeria. So let's keep working at this. Let's build leadership in ways that we can. And like you said as well, everything rises and falls on leadership. So if your leadership is developed, your business will grow, your life will expand, your family will be happy. It's going to be exciting all the way. Thank you again, Demola Omitayo. It was nice having you here today. I particularly love those white beard. That white beard.
You would let me leave this down there.
I'm trying to dye my hobo. It's not dying.
This is the only place that is white. This is all black. So
that's interesting, isn't it? That's interesting. Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, good night, everybody. I'm going to put some music on, as my custom is. I'll put some kind of music that I like on, and then the music will on for like 3 minutes, and then we'll shut down the class. Thank you very much.